Hi, everybody, and welcome to something new. This is the first episode of Let's Twist Again, a monthly live stream / podcast about a little remembered and short-lived professional soccer team called the Indiana Twisters that played 2 seasons in the Continental Indoor Soccer League back in the late 90s. I'm your host, Kenn Tomasch. I was the team's radio broadcaster those 2 years and its media relations director in the second year. Every month on this show, we are going to talk to someone who lived those 2 crazy years, get their perspectives. We'll let you know what they've been up to in the almost 30 years since the Twisters and the CISL folded. We'll take your questions as well. Just put them in the chat or the comments wherever you happen to be watching. You can be watching tonight on YouTube. We welcome those of you who are watching live on YouTube or on the Twisters page on Facebook or listening on Mixcloud. We're glad to have you. If you are not watching live, if you're watching later, thank you for watching whatever you do. And we'll try to do this every month. And we're going to do it all live because I don't want to have to edit it. I'm just going to be honest with you folks. All right, I can think of no better guest for our first time out than the captain. He was one of the most experienced indoor players on the Twisters, and he was a perfect choice to wear the armband, to be honest. His leadership helped things from going off the rails completely when that expansion season went sideways. He is, of course, Rich Ryerson, and he joins us now from his home in Las Vegas, where he's lived for many, many years. Cap, how are you?
I'm very well, Ken. This is great. I haven't heard that intro song that you had since I think probably 1996 or somewhere.
And we heard it a lot those 2 years. So
especially after all the goals we scored.
Catching up, which was a lot. So even though the Twisters were one of the, by my count, 12 professional clubs you played for, you did not hesitate when I asked you to do this. Why?
I think it was an important part of the journey. We were in a generation of guys that were real gypsies trying to make the game work still in the United States. So it was never hard for us to pick up and go. Unfortunately, there wasn't long lifespans. I was living in Palm Springs, California at the time, so I didn't have a franchise in my backyard. So we had to go. And if we were going to play, we had to go travel. And Indianapolis somehow became one of those destinations. Loved the city. Actually, it exceeded all expectations. So it was a great stopover for sure in the process.
We'll get to how you got there, but first let's take a look at your career arc as well, get a sense of that. You've lived in Vegas for many years, but you're originally from Maryland. When did you start playing, and when did you get a sense that maybe you could play at a higher level than you were playing?
Well, we come from a pretty athletic family. Both my parents were collegiate athletes. My dad was a runner, and they were coaches as well. My mom's in the Hall of Fame of Cabrini College for playing basketball. Yeah, so, they both were coaches when we were little. We were on the track, we were on the basketball courts, we were out on the fields. Football wasn't going to be an option for some reason. And baseball, we didn't really have too much baseball experience. But I think really the soccer thing maybe is a byproduct also of the environment we were in Maryland. Maryland was a hotbed for soccer. There was the Diplomats that played in D.C. and also the Baltimore. They might have been the Bays in the early days or Comets or something like that too. So I remember going to games there, and we would go to soccer camp in the summer, and pretty much that was kind of where we landed. We were swimmers. We did all sports, but I think around middle school is when we started realizing that we were doing pretty well. My brother Rob also, who's 11 months older than me, we would play 1v1s in the backyard all day long. We found guys that we could play with in the local kind of community center. And I think just having all the different international cultures, soccer was the game in Maryland. So that was it.
Now, your high school team was pretty good, yeah?
Yeah, Oakland Mills High School, coached by Alan Goldstein on the lower left of that photo. But I think in that picture there, I think everybody went on to play pretty much in college. That was a state championship team. Oakland Mills had a strong tradition. Columbia, Maryland actually had a strong tradition of soccer. And that's my brother, number 10 on the upper left. And that's me with a little bit more hair at number 15, I think, in the back row. But yeah, great experiences there, very dynamic players. There was a player prior to my years getting there named Daryl G., who went on to play with the New York Cosmos. And I think that's what we were all aspiring to at that point, was trying to get to the NASL.
And so you talked about Rob, a year older than you. You followed him to UNLV, and there you played and started more matches than any Rebel in the history of the program. Still have that record. Rob was the goal scorer. You guys had some really good teams. You went to the NCAA's 3 times. What were your Rebel days like for you?
I wanted to go west, my brother Rob was going to Philadelphia Textile originally, and he got recruited when the head coach Barry Bartow left Philadelphia to move on out to Las Vegas. So Rob went with him in 1982, and then I followed in 1983. I wanted to go actually to the University of San Francisco.
They were a great program at that time, as was Textile.
Yeah, and so that was the program I wanted to go to, but Rob made it easy for me to pick up and follow him.
Culture shock to go to the desert for somebody from Maryland?
Yeah, so I think for me, that I remember getting off the airplane the first night. I think it was a recruiting trip. It was one of those flashing lights that tells you the time and the temperature, and I think it was 10:05 and 1:05 were flashing back and forth. So when you stepped out of the plane, it was a completely different experience.
So you'd been a high school All-American. College is another animal, but you obviously did very well there as well, and had the chance to play in the Olympic Festival, which was formerly the National Sports Festival at that point. So did you start to get a sense here while you were in college and playing well for a good program that maybe something else could be lying out there for you?
Yeah, I think that's the dream of everyone. I was fortunate in my junior year, I think, of high school. Just going into the junior year of high school, we were able to go to the Netherlands and Germany and play in a tour, and that gave me the zest for traveling with soccer, also the international piece. But I think at that point on that trip, I realized there were 3 things I wanted to do. I wanted to represent the United States. I wanted to be a professional soccer player, and I wanted to play abroad. So at some level, we achieved all 3 of those things. It wasn't Bayern Munich, and it wasn't our full national team, but there were some permutations of it. So it was a good experience. I think that I attained everything that I could with the game. So
you'd mentioned the generation that you were in. It was also a weird generation that you came out of college at a weird time for American soccer. Had you been born 10 years earlier, you probably play in the North American Soccer League, maybe for the Washington Diplomats. Had you been born 10 years later, you're potentially one of the original founding players in Major League Soccer, perhaps. But neither of those were options at that point. So indoor was just about to peak at that point. And so the Baltimore Blast, who are also a local team, drafted you in the 3rd round in 1987, right after Dallas took a guy called Paul Caligiuri. I wonder whatever happened to that guy. Anyway, there were some good indoor players in this draft. David Doyle's in this draft. Wilhelm's in this draft. Paul Wright, who would later be a teammate of yours. Troy Snyder, who was a terrific defender. But you did not go the indoor route right away. Why and where did soccer take you next?
Well, one of the roommates that we had in the college experience at UNLV was a Swedish player. And as I said, international soccer sounded good. So I'd been drafted, but I went over to Sweden and actually had an opportunity to train with a couple of Swedish teams. There was IFK Gothenburg, which was, they had just won the Euros actually at that time. I also trained with a club called Örgryte and then Gais. So there were 3 different teams. And so I thought I was staying in Sweden. So I let Kenny Cooper know that, thank you for drafting me, but I was going to stay in Sweden. And that's what we ended up doing for 2 years. So it was a good experience going to Sweden. Like you say, there was no real outdoor opportunities, and we were kind of purist at the time. We wanted to be outdoor soccer players, but I think what eventually happened is all we had was the indoor option.
Not a lot of Americans in the mid-'80s were able to go and play in Europe. Now we look at it, it's much more common. We see players going over there as early as 17, 18 years old. What was it like for you as an American in Europe, even though, as you said, it wasn't Bayern Munich, but you were playing in Europe? How did the other players treat you?
Well, I think there was, the IFK Gothenburg, which is the biggest team in Sweden, possibly. He said to me, we could buy anybody in Europe. We're not going to take a chance on an American player. So that was easy. That was right to the point. It was direct. It made sense, and they could actually go out and explore European players that have the pedigree and they have the history. But there was a lot of respect. I mean, American players, we didn't have an established culture of soccer, I would say. But I think the Scandinavian style for me was a good fit. Playing kind of pretty direct, pretty strong, battles in the air and tackles and things like that. So I think as far as me adapting to their style of play, I think it was good. But I think from the other side, I think they were very accepting. And to this day, I have very, very dear friends that are still living in Sweden. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I just spent a week actually in Sweden with 2 of those guys. So yeah, the Scandinavians were fantastic. My grandfather from Norway, my grandmother from Sweden. So it was an easy adaptation.
And when that chapter ended, you made it back to the States with something called the California Emperors. This club had been the Hollywood Kickers at one point, but real estate developer Dan Foley bought them, moved them to Redlands, California in the Inland Empire. And there you not only played, but you were working in the front office, right? And that kind of foreshadowed your career in business as well. You have a business degree. I know that.
Right. Yeah. I think I was making more money on that team for my gas reimbursement than I was for playing games. If we got a bonus for winning, it was good. That meant we got a little bit extra money. But yeah, that was a great experience too. I think the California Emperors, the Foley family was, I think they were very forward thinking. They did bring me into the front office to work on kind of just community camps, clinics, marketing, that kind of thing, a little bit of fundraising also. At the time I was living at Palm Springs, so it was easy to get the hour drive from Palm Springs to Redlands, California. No traffic. The weather was hot. We had a great coach named Rildo Menezes, who was a Brazilian national team player. But that team also had some great players. A very dear friend of mine, Mike Fox, who had a stellar career in indoor Olympian. He was on that team as well. And yeah, that was it. That was an interesting experience too. It was part of the journey.
You mentioned Mike Fox and the journey. Mike had literally just moved his whole family there, and 3 days later the team went belly up, which is a lesson for us all. And as you mentioned, that generation, that was kind of the thing that happened. You got kind of a little bit used to it, but it sucked for him, obviously.
Yeah, no, that was we got to do that in Salt Lake. So yeah, so he had it in California Emperors, and he didn't warn me well enough before I went to Salt Lake.
Well, one of those, and just to close the loop on the California Emperors, one of your teammates there, Monty Reeves, future Twister, who is now a middle school dean in San Antonio, Texas. I just emailed him today to try to get him on the show in the future. Great guy. So you talked about Salt Lake. So you go from California Emperors to the Salt Lake Sting. You played against them in 1990. They had been supported well, but they'd still lost a ton of money. And then they tried to set up a nonprofit to run them in 1991. That didn't go well either, did it on and off the field. Salt Lake is then and as now, a beautiful city, friendly people. It's great to be. But what was that Sting team like on, and what was the organization like off the field?
That also was that franchise. I mean, it's the same group of guys. It's just different faces. I mean, it was a really good, dedicated group of young guys that wanted to play soccer. Dominic Militello, who's still there in Salt Lake, made a life there. I think Sean Blakeman, who I still see quite a bit, was also at Salt Lake for a minute. The problem with Salt Lake is that about halfway through, we started realizing that there was going to be some financial difficulties there. And I remember actually in that locker room also being the representative of the team with the league as we were trying to maybe have a walkout, or we were in the locker room. And I know that I was having dialogue at the same time that we were in the locker room with the ownership and with the league about actually going out and playing. So half of the group of guys said, no, we're not going to go until we get paid. The other half said, come on, we got to go do this. We've got fans out there waiting for us. And I was kind of the middleman of that whole thing, trying to make both sides happy. We did end up going out and playing that game, but I think that was probably the last game that we played. I couldn't remember which game it was, but yeah, a little bit of pressure there for sure. Trying to not only play, but also make sure that the guys were happy and somehow try and solidify maybe getting paid.
Right. With 10 games into that season, the league pulled the plug on the Sting, and that would kind of a foreshadowing of a lot of things that happened in that time of year. So you went back to Maryland, played a few games for your hometown Bays there as well, but then it was back to California, and really a relatively good situation for the time, a relatively stable situation. The Los Angeles Salsa, they were one of the better run APSL teams at that time. It's a real talent on this team. Tell us who some of the guys are who we're looking at in this team picture from 1993.
Well, in that front row, you've got Mike Fox, who we just spoke about. You've got Paul Wright, Thor Lee, Kevin Grimes, Philip Jiao is on the lower left. Philip was a great player for our country and actually East Coast guy from Maryland as well. In the back row, you have Danny Pena, Dale Irvine, Jose Vasquez, and then with the beard in the back row, he was kind of, I would say, our franchise player from Brazil. His name was Paulinho Criciúma, and he had a great career in Brazil and in Mexico, and he was our go-to guy there. And we did have the same coach, I think, Rildo Menezes, who was with the California Emperors, was also the coach of the LA Salsa in that year in 1993. I think it did change after that. But yeah, Rildo was he was a great coach for all of us, and that was probably the most stable soccer experience that I ever had.
You'll see in the middle there, Octavio Zambrano, who went on to coach the LA Galaxy and is still, obviously and then there's this young man there, pregame.
That's it.
Game face.
Looks a little different than he looks today, but yeah, that's the guy.
Don't we all? Now, the thing about this team was you guys were 3 minutes away from a championship in the APSL championship in 1993 against the Colorado Foxes. You have a nice touch here, nice ball out of the back to Paul Wright, and this turns out to be a goal, and it looked like this might stand up to be the winning goal. Nice finish as he gets around the keeper. He was fast, as we all know, and so that put you guys up 1-0. You're leading late. Colorado is the defending champions, coached by Dave Durr, who we'll see here at the end of this. Nice touch by Paul Wright, but things very late in this game, as what happens in soccer sometimes, things fell apart. Tell us what happened going into the final few minutes of this APSL championship game in 1993. Big crowd, 10,000 plus at Titan Stadium in Fullerton.
Well, and not to correct, but Philip Jiao was the guy, the goal scorer there.
Oh, that was Jiao. Okay.
Yeah, so that was Jiao. And I think what had happened there is you might have seen the first touch that we had in the box was a negative touch, and we just got on the wrong side of the ball there. It was, I think, crossed, and rather than clearing it out, I think we tried to control it. That's Ted Eck there that scored the goal, I think.
Yep.
And I think that put us into overtime, and in overtime, I think they just had a little bit more in the tank than we did, and I think that was disappointing because later on we would win the championship with the Cleveland Crunch. So that could have been a great year. It could have been the APSL championship and the NPSL championship. But as you see, that it didn't work out that way. Ian Foyer, who was the goalkeeper right there in that photo, is still with the LA Galaxy, I believe, on their coaching staff, and had a great career playing as well. Went and played in Europe and played in England and things like that too. So anyway, that's me getting beat there, and I think it was a bit offside. So I don't know if that was the winning goal, but yeah, that was
the third one. That was one that made it 3-1 was the final. Yeah, you mentioned that, and those things happen. And apologies to Paul Wright and Philip Jiao for getting that one wrong, but there was some controversy in that match as well. And now, we're 30 something years later. You mentioned Paulinho, 2-time league MVP. Rildo subbed him off late in that game and took a lot of heat for that. And in fact, ownership made him resign after that. So the second year you got a Russian coach, if memory serves. And that was you're at the end of a 2-year cycle there for the California or for the LA Salsa. But you mentioned Cleveland. Your first foray indoors, you go to Cleveland, and what a team to go to at that stage. The Cleveland Crunch were a tremendous indoor team. You got to play with guys like Hector Marinero and Zoran Karic and guys like that, and you win the title. That's you there on the right-hand side, number 5 there as well. What was your experience like playing for the Cleveland Crunch and being an indoor player for basically the first time at 28? Yeah,
I had no clue as to how that game really worked. I was an outdoor player playing indoor soccer. So, there's a lot of different strategy that I didn't understand. I went in there trying to actually utilize the same concepts that I had from outdoor in the indoor game, and they're completely different. So I think for me in that experience, obviously, just like you said, the players were amazing. Zoran Karic, one of the best players that I ever played with. Hector Marinero, his ability to finish, unbelievable. Tim Tima in the back. I mean, there was a lot of maturity. Otto Orphan goal. Scott Uteritz, Troy Dyack were guys that I hung out with, and that was it was a very, very interesting experience because like I say, in that year, I also tore my PCL like in a preseason game. So we got through the preseason. We played a preseason match. And in that match, I don't know, I think I took a shot and I got tackled and fell on my knee wrong. And next thing I know, I was probably out for a solid month of just doing rehab. We didn't have surgery at that time on the PCL for me particularly. But then when the year turned, because it was a pretty long season, into the new year, I started getting more minutes, started getting into the game a little bit. I would still say very, very raw that you're still just too eager, too excited, too tough. I got to get into these tackles, and you're trying to pull the crowd in at the same time because they're right there. And in reality, I think I matured as an indoor player more as with experience, and that was the first year of really playing indoor soccer with those indoor strategies and concepts and things like that. But I was surrounded by a lot of great players in that team, and I think that helped me grow quite a bit. So winning a national championship, I think we called it a world championship on our ring. So I think it does say world, so we want to make sure that we're not just a national champion, we're a world champion. But I still cherish that ring. I still, I cherish those days with the guys. We had, I think, a 20th anniversary or 25th anniversary game that I went back to Dayton and played in, and seeing all the old guys was a lot of fun.
You're watching the first episode of Let's Twist Again, a retrospective on the Indiana Twisters from 1996-97. We're with Captain Rich Ryerson. You're probably watching us on YouTube or maybe on the Twisters Facebook page or listening on Mixcloud. Thank you wherever you are listening. In fact, put comments in. Are we here? First comment of the night from Juan Carlos Reza, who played for the Twisters, says, "Congrats, my dear friends." Gracias, amigo. Good to have you watching as well as everyone else watching. So then it's still indoor now, but you're back to California as you go to something called the San Jose Grizzlies. The CISL opened its second season with an expansion team in San Jose. How did you wind up there?
Well, I think at that time with the salsa, I kind of was moving on from the salsa. We had that year in Cleveland, which was a championship year, and I think the NPSL and the CISL, the two different leagues, I think were working a little bit together in that first year of the Grizzlies. So I think our general manager, Al Miller, I believe, worked it out with Milan Mandarich, who was the owner of the Grizzlies. It was a brand new arena, Shark Stadium, whatever it was called at the time. It was a good opportunity to go. Bob McNabb was the coach of that team. Kevin Hundelt from the indoor, the NPSL was there. Preki was on the team as well. So it was this was a good experience, and it was a good group, very young group also. So I think it took some time for us to kind of really kind of find our way also with this team. But the San Jose, good crowd support, beautiful city, and there's Bernie the Bolt now running, and I think all in all. A really good opportunity to grow. And so San Jose was a great place for me for 2 seasons.
I don't know if you got an assist on that one, but you probably merited one there.
I probably walked over to the scorekeeper and asked for it. I don't know. But
So why didn't you go back to Cleveland after that then?
Let's see, Cleveland, I think what I did at that point, we're getting old, right? So we're getting older. We're maybe 31 at this point. And I'm thinking that, we're starting a family. I think that year might have, I don't think that was the year, 98, I think was 96. Yes. So 96, we had just had, actually, that was the Indianapolis year. So I just had a daughter, and, it was getting harder to pick up and leave that gypsy life. I was fortunate that my spouse at the time actually was pretty agreeable to going, so there was a lot of support from her. As I said, when we went to, Salt Lake, we moved everything we owned to Salt Lake, and within those 3 months or whatever, we found out that that wasn't going to work out. So as we had a barbecue the last night, this is kind of ironic, and this is kind of funny too, but we had a barbecue the last night, and all the guys were over at my apartment, and the next day when we were packing up the truck, we poured all the coals into the dumpster, not realizing that they were still pretty warm. So
literal dumpster fire?
Literal dumpster fire that we had in Salt Lake on our way out of town. So that's how I left Salt Lake. Love the city now, go quite a bit, but yeah, that was a dumpster fire at the end.
So the Grizzlies go under after 2 years. A lot of that happened in the CISL. At this point, are you starting to think, am I just really unlucky, or am I a franchise killer, or what?
No, I think all the new franchises were my fault, not not the end, but no, it's like I say, by not having a franchise in my backyard, I had no choice. So I would go for as long as I could with whatever franchise I had, and try and make the best life in that city at the same time. So I think that was the thing with the franchise killer. I would have gotten a reputation. Nobody would have taken me on their team. But I think it was unfortunate. It was the way it was supposed to be. I've got no doubt that it worked exactly how it was supposed to be. I was in the right place at the right time for each one of these different stops. And I've made friends forever. When you talk about Monty Reeves, to hear that name is incredible. When we talked earlier about Baroni, Baroni's the first player that I met when I got to Indianapolis. We stayed in the same place. I knocked on the door at 4 a.m. I'd just driven across country, and I woke him up. That's how I met Baroni, and it's great to see. We're not as close, but great to see what's going on in his life and things like that. So, yeah, all of these spots went exactly where they're supposed to be. I think it prepared me for a lot of what I ended up doing in the future. We couldn't script that out at that time, but I think as an athletic director, as the coach at UNLV, there were some benefits to all those different things.
So you mentioned the Twisters, another expansion team. They made you the 5th pick in the draft, right after the immortal Saeed Fazlagic. What are you thinking now about? Again, you were very okay with picking up and moving. Now you have to pick up and move again to another startup team. At this point, it's just, okay, let's go play. This is where the gig is, right?
Right. Yeah. And where are we now? Which
Indianapolis.
Okay. So Indianapolis. Yeah.
Here's the team.
Yeah. So Indianapolis. Oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, George actually was, I think, pretty eager to try and get me there. That was a big step. I didn't know a thing about Indianapolis or Indiana or living in the Midwest. I was coastal at the time. I grew up in Maryland, and then I was on the West Coast. I think, not all the way to California, but between Las Vegas and Palm Springs, actually. So this was a big move, but I think it was good. When I look at the players there and the guys, and the effort was unbelievable. There was never a preseason that I had that was as hard physically. I felt if we weren't a good soccer player, we could beat any Olympic, 11-man track team in a race. We would have been just fine. But I think the fitness actually came in handy after about, I think, the first maybe 6-7 games. I think we had a really hard start within that first year. You'd know better than I do, but I think it was a tough start at the beginning.
Yep.
I think that was maybe us, working so hard in the preseason. We might have been fatigued for those first games, but I think then it came back to, really come in handy. I think we went on a long winning streak also. So I think like I say, better than I do on those stats.
We're going to get to that in a second here. Tell me more about that first training camp at Off the Wall Sports in Carmel, Indiana, with a bunch of guys who did not know each other, playing for a coach. Some of them had history with him because Jorge had coached in Mexico City the year before, but most of you didn't really know him that well. What was he like? He's legendary among people who lived it here, but for the benefit of those watching who may not be, how did he run that first camp, and what was it like with a bunch of guys who you really didn't know?
Well, like I say, it was that month of May, I think, was kind of our preseason, and we were really on top of each other. It was almost like a college preseason. We would eat together, I think probably all 3 meals. I don't think there were many guys there with spouses or families, so I think it was everybody was kind of really pulling together. We were working out very, very hard, as I said. So to do that together, to get through that preseason, we used to have this dynamic warm-up that we would do that would be 25 minutes long, and we'd be exhausted before we even saw the ball. So I think that was difficult, but I think everybody respected George and Jorge. I think he was called the magic marker when he played. So he played at the highest level of MISL. He had a long career as a player. So I think there was a lot of respect for what he was doing. We all bought into it in that first year. I think we were all fully supportive of it. It was a new franchise, so the city embraced us. And I think, like I say, Market Square was a fun place to play in. Off the Wall was great. But it was extremely demanding. I do remember that.
Now, you had been with expansion teams before, so you know that inevitably there are going to be some challenges. Did you start to see anything in the first couple of months there that made you think, I wonder?
Not having everything ready when we got there was part of it. We were staying in some shut down Army barracks, I think is kind of Army housing or something like that. There was
probably in Lawrence, probably out in Lawrence, probably on the base, the old base.
So there was a base there, and I know that first month we ended up kind of shacking up together in that base, So I mean, it wasn't cots. We were doing okay, but I mean, the thing was I don't think it was really the ownership at that time might not have understood all of the dynamics of the professional game, right. And what the players need. So, they might have had the business acumen, but maybe as far as like the playing piece, what was it going to take for us to be good as far as, building that team. And I think the other thing is that when we got there, my signing bonus wasn't there. And so that kind of also peeved me a little bit. So I was knocking on the door on day one, we are missing an envelope or somewhere. So that's, that happened. But like I say, we had faith and trust that it was going to work out, and eventually it did.
And that first game in Detroit, the less said about it, the better. An 8-2 loss. Detroit was really good. This team was making its debut, getting its feet wet. But then the next week, in fact, actually, the anniversary was this past Saturday, June 21st, 1996, Market Square Arena against the Washington Warthogs. And as we take a look now at some of the highlights of that game, of that home opener back in 1996, tell me what some of you memories are of this game and that night and the crowd at MSA.
Well, I think, except for this part right here, I think we had a good start. We got the huddle right in the middle of the field. But, yeah, it's exciting. I mean, to come running out of the goal at the beginning of the game when they're announcing everybody, we had a lot of fan support. I don't know what the number was for that game, but, I think I really do believe that there were some very, very good players on this team also. Mariano, who you just saw score, Terry Rowe was a part of it. I think Matt Blackburn, I think there's some guys there that were very, very good players. But as far as just the excitement of being in a new franchise, getting the uniforms on for the first time, really kind of enjoying that whole experience was a lot of fun. And like I said, I think this was I underestimated what Indianapolis was all about. It was a great stop.
You saw Juan Carlos Reza score a goal there at the end. He's watching now. Thanks for that as well. So that was a gutsy performance, but it was also kind of a recurring theme that year. You lost 6 games by a single goal. Part of it is that's indoor. I mean, the odd goal decides a lot of games in indoor, but it's also part of a team trying to figure out how to win and how to close out games. And that was an example of one. Mate Cojul scores from the red line to tie it up, but you end up losing in overtime. There are other games you come really close, 2 7-6 losses in that first 4 games. 0-4, but then comes the first win finally, and that first one for an expansion team is always the one that gets the monkey off your back. That came on the 5th of July, 1996, against the Houston Hotshots. And here we see Matt Blackburn scoring on his own rebound. Memories of this first game and how that felt. What was that like?
Well, like you said, the monkey off your back. So you've worked so hard in the preseason. You've run more than you've ever run in your life. Even before these games, I remember how hard the warm-ups were. For us in the pregame, we'd be down a hallway somewhere just trying to get our bodies warm, and we'd be so tired by the time we played. But I really do believe that you can see the excitement there. Osvaldo scoring, and actually getting 2 goals in a row. It looks like, and so winning is what it's all about. That's why we're there. That's what the fans want. That's what we want, and. We were able to get that first win, and it might have gave us some momentum because you can get in a rut, winning, or you can be on a streak winning or losing and be on a streak winning. So it was a good day.
You mentioned Osvaldo Monroy. He scored 4 goals in that game, which was a club record until the immortal Mirko Castillo broke it. The next year, Osvaldo is going to be our guest on the show in a future episode as well. Now, at this point, you're kind of taking to this indoor. You've had some indoor experience now, and you'd learned it a little bit more. You were a defender, but in the indoor game, everybody kind of gets into the attack. You had some skills too. Here's a nice little assist for a goal as well. Did you find yourself, yeah, I can do this indoor thing?
Well, I think it did get easier with time, no doubt. Games played, Terry Rowe and I always used to talk about it's the real teachers, the games played. And so the more games that we got, starting in Cleveland and having a significant role in San Jose for 2 seasons and then coming to Indianapolis. So by then we might have been close to 100 games played. And I think that's really the teacher. So the game got a little bit easier for me. Understood that I wanted, how I wanted to defend. Anytime I got close to the line, I was thinking of, can I get a shot off or at least shoot to the far post, and then hopefully somebody standing at the far post. So yeah, I think the adaptation started coming because I do remember the first time I tried to play outdoor after playing indoor for so long. My radius of passing was about 5 yards when I needed to kick at 40 yards. So I think, I really enjoyed the indoor. Indoor was pretty fun. It was good for the fans. It was good for us. Lots of goals were scored and pretty high intensity. It's, I think, in my opinion, very similar to hockey, the excitement of hockey and what goes on in a hockey game. And it's a shame that it didn't really catch on like it was with the MISL. The Major Indoor Soccer League had some great years also. So you had the NASL, the MISL, and then we had what we had between NPSL, CISL, and I did 1 year in the EISL too. So it's
we'll get to that as well. I want to thank all of you who are watching this right now, and remind you that if you have a question for Rich or a comment or anything that you want us to know about, put it in the chat here wherever you're watching, and we'll answer things either as we go along or when we get close to the end. Now, we can't talk about this 96 Twister team without talking about the turmoil, obviously, and things going pear-shaped. Quite frankly, the team did not draw well. It didn't generate enough revenue. And David and Rodney Goins, brothers who owned the team, were very well-intentioned, but they weren't like some of the other owners in the CISL who owned NBA teams and had control of the arenas. So a little bit different dynamic there in that, like you mentioned, maybe the experience of running a team is a little bit different and what professional players need and stuff. When money got tight, the league stepped in. And that last month and a half or so was very difficult. With the league eventually did take the team over and ran it under Roy Turner as the kind of interim general manager for the last month and a half or so. What are your memories of that time and you as the captain trying to hold things together, keep the guys playing hard, which they did?
Yeah, but players want to play. We don't, we want to play and we want to get paid what we agreed to play for. And it was, I think it was important for the league to come in and take the reins, I think, to kind of stable the ship a little bit. It was easier than in the Salt Lake situation. We didn't have the league saying, we're going to make sure that you guys are taken care of. I think in the CISL, we had that guarantee from the league that you guys were going to get paid. And so that made it easier to kind of convince the guys to stick with it and let's keep going. I never gave up on the Salt Lake gig, and I never gave up on the Twister, experience with the financial turmoil that was there. We wanted to play. We loved playing. Everybody that was there was not there for the money. We did want to get paid for what we were, agreed upon. But at the end of the day, I think we were there for the passion of the game and to be a part of it, make sure that the game was growing. We were still out in the community doing community events. We'd take Mr. Twister Guy with us, and he would be the mascot out there with us, and we'd do camps and clinics and still sign autographs, so that kind of in my mind right now. And, there were people before me that gave back to the game, before that NASL. When I think back to like my college coach, Barry Bartow, who was the national team coach, and they would meet people at the airport for the first time and then fly over and play against Italy or something like that. So we had it, I think, tough in our era. I think the people before us, though, had it harder, maybe in the 70s and 50s and things like that, and even beyond that. So when I hear the guys now, bickering back and forth about playing time and representing the country and who's doing what. I still think there's an army of people before me that if they weren't around, the game wouldn't be around. And so when we talk about that grassroots effort, that was the grassroots effort. And I think just because of the happenstance and the circumstances we had, we were also at a very, very grassroots level trying to keep the game going because we loved the game and we wanted to see a future. We were hopeful that we would have a payday one day, and maybe still represent the country. But like I say, I think walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. And I know I could walk a mile in somebody else's shoes that came before me, and it was a lot harder than what we had. We were fortunate to play. We were fortunate that we had the league behind us. Mm-hmm. The Goins brothers had great intentions, I'm sure, and I think the Cook family, they come in, saved the franchise also. So there were some great people that made sure that soccer was sustainable in, I would say, from about 88 maybe until when the MIS or when Major League Soccer came around. I thought, here we go again. That was literally what I thought. Oh, here's another league. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's proven to stand the test of time right now.
You mentioned the Cooks. We'll get to them in a second. You mentioned our team mascot Spinner. We're going to have exciting late breaking news about him at the end of the show, so stick around for that. Before we move on, another comment from John Kluba, who is watching. Who every time I go to Atlanta for work, I make sure to see John. Says, Rich, thanks for your leadership with the Twisters and the whole team. You shaped the team at the time and helped the future for many players. Glad you're still doing well. So is John, successful high school assistant coach as well in the Atlanta area. Thanks for watching, John. We hope to get. We've got people watching, which is great, and thank you all for chiming in. So to get to the Cooks, so Dan and Carl Cook, brothers, shipping magnates in Indianapolis, end up right at the end of the season buying the team. A great effort in the final game of the year to win in Monterey, a very, very hard place to play. And in fact, Monterey won a couple of titles. So you must have thought, okay, things are looking up for me. And that's why you signed a 2-year contract after that first year. You mentioned how much you enjoyed Indianapolis. You must have thought, I think we've got something going here. I'm very optimistic. What were your thoughts going into year 2?
Absolutely. I think you just described it perfectly. I was very optimistic about the direction that the club was going in. I think that we finally found our way also through the season. We were, I think, acclimating to the style that George was asking of us to play. We had some quality players, John Kluba, Juan Carlos Reza. I mean, Osvaldo Monroy, when I think about the guys too, Matej Kozul, so there was quality young players that were hungry to play. And I think, I was optimistic. I think I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'm always optimistic, but it's a better place to be, I think, than the alternative. But Indianapolis, as I said earlier, exceeded my expectations. I had no idea. The people were great. I think the community was great. It was a beautiful city. And I was hopeful that we could get another 2 years there for sure.
Now, that was a time MLS had started at that point. You're 31 at that point now. The outdoor was starting to make a resurgence, not just at the major league level, where, to be honest, the early days of MLS, they weren't paying a lot of money. I mean, especially for American players. Did you even look into going back outdoor, or had you closed the door on that?
No, I think in '98 I had the option, or I had the opportunity to go to the LA Galaxy for a weekend. So actually their center back, I was living in Palm Springs. Their center back, I think, broke their leg on a Wednesday night. I got a call on a Thursday night. Hey, are you still fit? Can you come up? And I said, listen, I'm older right now. I've got a family. I'm going to come for the weekend, and we'll know by Sunday whether I can stay or not. And so it was pouring down rain. As I said before, my range of passing was different. My outdoor fitness was different. The age factor, some of the guys I played with in the salsa were at this LA Galaxy group, and they were flying. And I just remember, I'm not even staying to talk to anybody. I'm just getting my car and I'll drive back down to Palm Springs. So I don't think we ever even had a thanks for coming conversation. But in '95, I think that might have been the first year, '96. I don't remember which.
'96, yeah.
So '96, I was actually told that we couldn't, and I don't know if it was from whoever had my rights at that time. It said that we couldn't go to the MLS.
They'd have to loan. They'd had to loan you, and the whole single entity thing would have been a big mess.
So that was, I think that was prohibitive for me. What turns out to find out, a lot of guys that were in the league ended up getting contracts in those first years. Of course, it would have been great to be a part of that as to where it is today.
Right.
But for me to leave where we were and what we were trying to build in Indianapolis to try and go chase that, not knowing, having been at, what did you say, 12 franchises?
So.
Not in 3 years, not knowing kind of seeing what the pattern was. I really had my doubts about how successful that would be. And I was wrong, but that's okay.
Well, a lot of people felt that way too. And see, here, the benefit of time, this is why I love these retrospective things, because I'd never heard that story about the Galaxy, and people are more than willing to talk about, let people know things that happened that they'd never known before. So that was a breaking news there too. But so that 97 season, optimistic, the team, again, it was a slightly slow start, but for you, it was really kind of a poor start because you suffered a concussion that kept you out for quite a while. What happened to make that happen? How did that happen?
Well, we were playing in San Diego, and I remember actually extending my body for a tackle, probably over aggressive for an indoor game. It probably didn't have to win the tackle where I tried to, but in reaching and really extending, I ended up hitting my head on the floor. And those days, there wasn't much padding underneath the turf.
Not at all.
So it was either ice or concrete. And that one was a bad one. I'd suffered some concussions prior to that. In our day, playing outdoor, we'd have, as a center back, we would have the goalkeepers punting the ball. I don't know, this would never be something we would do now, but they'd punt the ball, and then we would challenge, for a ball that was just punted 60 yards, and challenged to go ahead it. So I don't know how many concussions. I think probably 6 concussions that I think that were legitimate concussions, with the being knocked out, throwing up, all those different symptoms that you get. In this particular case in San Diego, I just remember it was like waking up on the floor. Then it was a highlight reel, somehow getting to the back. I think my parents might have been at that game, unless I'm hallucinating about that. But I think my dad came back to check on me, and at that point, we came back to Indianapolis, and I had trouble with light and with just the head injury. It was I think we weren't doing any concussion protocol at that time, so there was no baseline for us to know where we were. My baseline would be a mess now if we tried to figure that out. But I think the thing was there was a slow recovery, and in that process, I think, as I was trying to come back, then there was, I think, just a little shifting of kind of, I don't want to say loyalties, but I think just some things, dynamics within the team were changing.
Yeah, the hierarchy of things within the club were definitely changing, and oddly enough, and it's unfortunate because as you were sidelined, the team was getting on a hot streak and would eventually become a very, very good team in the CISL year, and you did not get to enjoy it. And in fact, that was the last we saw of you in a Twister uniform, because come that July, they traded you and Terry Rowe for Paul McDonald. That's a whole nother story. Paul McDonald was a Twister for as long as it took for him to get out of the cab, turn around and get back in the cab and go to the airport. We'll tell that story again one time. But that was it. Did you push for that? Did they come to you? How did the trade situation go down?
I think part of it really was I think we probably started feeling uncomfortable in the locker room and in the recovery. I remember, it's hard to tell with the recovery. That article said that was a mild concussion.
A mild concussion is a concussion someone else gets.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, it was, it became clear that there was a wedge between, I think, George and myself somehow. And, after being with him in that first year and, being very, very close to him, whatever transpired in that locker room, there was, again, change within the locker room and leadership. And I think that kind of segmented the group a little bit and divided the group a little bit. So I would say that I'm friends with Dale Irvine, who was the head coach at Anaheim at the time with Mike Fox. Again, these names kind of keep popping up.
Mhm.
Terry Rowe also was a teammate of those guys too, so that everybody knew each other. And I think then we might have had. I don't think I was healthy to play against Anaheim in Indianapolis. I can't
Right.
remember.
You did not. You only played those first 2 games, right?
Yeah, but I think I think what had ended up happening was there was some dialogue about going back home. Do you want to get back home to Palm Springs? And you could live in Anaheim, basically in Mission Viejo or somewhere like that. It was, so at that point, I think, unfortunately, yeah, it took a turn a little on both sides. I think the club was probably okay with Terry and I going, and Anaheim felt that they got a good deal. I know Paul McDonald was angry about having to leave, and go to Indianapolis. He didn't want to leave, but I think it worked out to where we could finish out the season with Anaheim, and Anaheim had a pretty strong season that season too.
And in fact, Paul McDonald was flipped then for Chili Farias, who turned out to be a very key part of the second half of the season for the Twisters, and was the last guy from that team who was still playing almost 20 years later. Chili just kept going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So the CISL goes under, as happens. It was the last year of the Anaheim Splash. Things were getting weird at the end. You couldn't play a home playoff game. Had to play both games in Sacramento. Lost them both. That was it for the CISL, which went under that December. As all the couple of the clubs survived after that into a new league. But you were not done playing, because you wound up in something called the EISL. You mentioned it before, the Eastern Indoor Soccer League, which was a 2-year Southeastern Indoor Minor League. And you played in Baton Rouge, which was a family affair, not just because of your daughter Vashti, as you could see here, experienced it with you, but what brought you to Louisiana?
Well, Uncle Rob was the coach of that team, so it was a little nepotism, I think, that brought me down there.
But you were defender of the year, so I mean, you could still play, obviously, and that was a league full of young guys. There were some good guys in that league. The Dososky brothers were in that league. There were a lot of good players in that league.
Well, that's that's another story. But the first touch I had, so I hadn't played any of the preseason with this group at all. I showed up. I literally drove from Palm Springs across the country. Oof. Not even to Baton Rouge. There might have been Tallahassee or somewhere. I don't know. I think I met
I-10, baby, all the way.
Yeah, exactly. I went right through Phoenix. But I met the team literally, I think, in that first game in the locker room. And I know Rob was under pressure because, all right, well, you're bringing your brother in. He's an older player and this and that and the other thing. And literally on my first touch of that game, a ball was played back to me at the red line, and I just kicked it as hard as I could at the goal. And sure enough, my first touch of the game literally was a goal from the red line. So
3-pointer as well, because they had multi-point scoring.
Yeah. So we had a 3-pointer there, a 3-0, and Rob looked like a superstar. And I eventually, I think I was the captain of that team too, and it was interesting dynamic with Rob and I, because we had played together for so long. We played against each other, I think, a couple times when he was with the Warthogs and I was with San Jose or something like that. And then to be together in Baton Rouge, it was a great way to finish my, let's say, indoor career playing. As you said, I was the defender of the year for the league, the EISL defender of the year, which is amazing. Thank you. But somehow I was on the second team for their all-star ranking. So they had the first.
These things are all political, you know that.
Yeah, of course. So so that's probably how I became a defender.
And you went to the final. You went to the final as well.
Yeah,
for losing to the team from Lafayette, who obviously was a very good side as well. Yeah. Before we move on here for a sec to your post career, we have Matt Blackburn who weighs in. Great to see you guys. Love the podcast. Thank you very much, Blackie. Good to hear from you. Question for the captain: will you be organizing a 30-year reunion in Vegas for the boys next year? I had not thought of that, but now that you mention it, Vegas would be a good place to have a reunion because you could host, but also people want to go to Vegas, right?
Yeah, I've got a facility, so yeah, we can. Matt's going to be the team mom on this one. We'll get going on that, but yeah, that would be interesting to bring everybody back or out to Vegas. We do it right here in Vegas, so we've got hotels, we've got outlets for eating, and we've got some soccer events too. So bring your golf clubs, Matt. I'll get it going.
let's look into that. I think if you're watching this now, if you're the Twisters, email twisters@kenn.com. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. And we'll ask everybody this question as we go along and see if, because that would be really good. I mean, getting to Indianapolis is different than Vegas. You know, I have great memories of Indianapolis as well, but having it in Vegas, I think that'd be really good. I mean, they know how to throw a party in Vegas. So let's look into that as well. So Baton Rouge, that was the end of the line as well. Your transition now, the transition from professional athlete to former professional athlete is often a challenge for many guys. How was it for you? What did you do next?
Still trying to figure it out. You know, I think that for sure, you know, because like you say, that transition is always difficult when you identify as a soccer player or whatever you know, any athlete. I think it's and you put all the time and the effort. You know, you go back to 8 and under soccer, and now I'm 31, 32, 33, whatever I was there at the end. And everything was seasonal. So we had our fall season and our spring season, and you know, and that became a way of life. And at the end of every season, you felt like you lost your best friend. You take a few weeks off, and then you get back at it. But I think the transition for me was fortunate. I had 2 young kids. I actually got into education. I was an athletic director. In those last couple of years of indoor, I was able to actually work at a school in Rancho Mirage, California, and become an athletic director. So I did that for 12 years. I coached at the College of the Desert. I was involved with creating a club called Desert United. So I went back and I got my licensing for U.S. soccer. So I started getting into the coaching world, the education world. And then, you know, after doing that for 12 years, we ended up moving here to Las Vegas to work with my brother in concrete. So I have one brother who played at UNLV, but he stayed in Las Vegas, and he has a concrete company here. And so it was when Vegas was booming around 2004, 2005. And that's when we came back.
Was that Tim or Kenny? Is it Tim
This
or
is
Kenny?
Ken. Yeah, big Ken. Yeah, Kenny. So anyway, so we came back to work with Kenny, and you know, all I knew at that point, I didn't know concrete, that's for sure. But I was Kenny's older brother, so of course I knew more than Kenny knew, who had been in the business for all his life. So I realized that probably education and coaching was a better route. We also, in about 2000, started taking soccer teams over to Europe to go play in the Gothia Cup and to play in Scandinavia and things like that. So there were some, you know, just a lot of side things with soccer still involved. My kids didn't play soccer. Apparently I yelled at them. I don't recall doing that, but that was somehow the case. But 2008, as you got the picture there.
You became an assistant. You started as an assistant at UNLV, your alma mater.
So I started as an assistant in 2008. 2009, I was an assistant. And then in 2010, I was at a recruiting event with the head coach, Mario Sanchez. And while we were driving back from the recruiting event, I think it was at the Reach Fields there in Phoenix or Scottsdale. Yeah. So as we were driving back, I was sitting with him when he got the phone call invitation offer actually to become an assistant coach at Louisville. So as I was driving back in the car, I got half of the conversation that the head coach of UNLV was leaving. And at that point, he said to me, Rich, they're going to cut the program at UNLV, and I need to take this job. I've got a young family and those kind of things. So Mario, who was very, very generous in allowing me to be a part of his staff, especially having been a UNLV guy, and he was a Fresno State guy, you know, and all these different variables that he was an outsider in a very tight-knit UNLV alumni crew. But he allowed me to be a part of it too. So I'm eternally grateful for Mario trusting me in the program. But basically in 2010, in the spring of 2010, I did get word from the administration that basically it was, you have 24 hours to find $2 million. And so that was the ask. And so at that point, Mario was on his way out. They told the players that they were going to cut the program. So the players were all kind of in a panic. I said, hey, we'll take care of this. $2 million in 24 hours, no problem.
Can do.
Yeah, can do. And sure enough, we had the Engelstead family, which is a big philanthropic family here in Las Vegas, and they had the Imperial Palace Hotel at one point, and just Ralph Engelstead was a big player in Las Vegas. And basically, they made the phone call that needed to be made to the president. So it was out of the athletic director's hands now. It was out of everybody's hands, but we had a little coffee meeting. We said, we're having trouble. A guy named Tim McGarry stepped in and made some more phone calls for us. And basically, I went back to the administration. I said, is this true? Do we need $2 million in 24 hours? They said, no, but you probably need $1 million in 48 hours. So, they did lower it by $1 million.
Okay.
I think that was the best negotiation I ever did.
Well done. Yes. Well done there. Business degree comes in handy.
Exactly. So anyway, the bottom line was, I think the family leveraged. Tim was a former player at UNLV, Tim McGarry. And I think the experience for him of coming to UNLV, playing at UNLV, was strong enough for the president to get a call saying, more or less, you dropped the program. We're not going to be donating the same amount of money that we normally donate. And so there we go.
Nice to have rich friends.
By default, Rich Ryerson then was offered the job, I think, in April of 2010. And we finished coaching at UNLV in 2021. So I had 12 complete years, or 12 seasons, to be the head coach. So, and that was
what great. Are you most proud of in that? Is it saving the program? Is it, you won WAC championships, you had really good teams, or you've sent guys on to the next level? What were you most proud of your time, 12 years as head coach at UNLV?
Well, I mean, just the other day, I texted a guy named Danny Musovsky, who plays for Seattle Sounders, and he got a chance to play against Paris Saint-Germain. So that's pretty cool. That it's awesome to see guys that are still playing, and there's a lot of guys still playing. But I think for us, as I talked with my staff and just myself, we probably had 80 guys graduate from UNLV, get their degree. And I would say of those 80 guys, at least 50% of them were first generation collegiate students, whether they were first generation American kids or just American kids and their families didn't go to college. So we had a high success rate of our graduation, and we were able to change, we talk about student athlete, we were able to change the overall GPA, bring up what was called our APR, our academic progress report. I mean, those are the things that are going to be longer lasting for me. I think as far as, wins are going to come and go. I got smacked one time by New Mexico by 11 goals. I mean, so deep lows. And then we won the WAC championship in 2014, which was the first time we won a championship in like 28 years or something like that. So
is Jack Whitefoot one of your guys?
Yeah, Jack is the super fan. I don't know how he's got this, but I'm happy to see him on the podcast here. And Jack, I haven't seen him in a bit, but he was the most. He'd bring his son out to every game, and probably the most loyal UNLV fan we've ever had. Good to see Jack. I missed the question. I don't know if you had a question.
No, he was just congratulating you. He was just saying that it was great to hear all these background stories before your legendary coaching years with the Rebels. It's good. This is an interactive exercise here. So
good
great.
To see
so
you,
much.
Jack.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Right. And Patrick McCarthy weighs in, say there was an MISL reunion in Vegas in 2018. Yes, there was. And a lot of former players showed up. Vegas is the perfect place for a reunion. So there's even more fodder for that. We're going to have to get on that. And, if you can still raise,
maybe we have to play Pittsburgh. Maybe we might have to play Pittsburgh Sting or something like that.
Well, we can do that. All right. So tell us what you're doing now. You're still involved in the game in a lot of different ways. And a lot of it too is, again, it keeps coming back to family with you.
Yeah. So these are two of my brothers. Rob is as you're looking at the photo to the right, and my brother Tim on the left. It's a picture of us at the opening ceremonies of the Gothia Cup. So I want to say for about 10 years now, we've been official agents of the Gothia Cup. So one of the things that I did with the Palm Desert group out of California in about 2000, my brother Tim and I actually took a group over to Scandinavia to do like a Scandinavian tour. So we went to Copenhagen, we went to Oslo, we were in Gothenburg, and it was about a 8-day deal. They get to play some games, get to have some culture, see Scandinavia, experience what I experienced when I was in high school, which was an amazing experience for me. So we try and provide them with very hands-on cultural experience with soccer involved. So what had happened was eventually we found this tournament, the Gothia Cup, which is the largest youth soccer tournament in the world. Right there's 50,000 people at the opening ceremonies, and we've actually marched in the opening ceremonies. They select one group from each country to go around, and so we've had the experience of winning that tournament twice, and with different teams, and that's something that I'm very passionate about doing. Is that the travel for me is unbelievable. I just got back. I saw Iceland, Denmark, and Sweden 2 weeks ago, and I was fortunate to be in Miami last week and got to see Real Madrid play against the Saudi Arabian team, Al Hilal. So the travel for me it was life changing, and for people that we take frequently. I had somebody actually reach out to me the other day saying, you know what, that was a life-changing experience, the experience going to Sweden. And we've taken adult teams, which is fun to do that. It's a different purpose. We've taken college teams to help them in their preseason and their building of their culture. So we've had college teams, and then youth, girls and boys teams have gone with us.
If people are interested in that, is there a place they can go? Is there a website
you
can go to?
RyersonTours.com. Ryerson Tours. Yeah, it's
right.
If you just Google Ryerson Soccer, it'll come up in one of the links.
And you mentioned giving young people an opportunity, and adults as well, the opportunity to see another part of the world, which is an awesome experience, and to play. But you've got some other things that you're involved with as well that can help some more of that grassroots level. Tell us about Get on the Bus.
So my brother Tim, who was in that photo, started a club called Ellicott City Soccer Club in Maryland, Ellicott City, Maryland. And when he was doing some of the recruiting of players and things like that, he realized that there was a real barrier for a lot of kids just to get to practice. So forget about the pay-to-play model. They couldn't even get there to play. So he came up with this idea of, why don't we go to the schools, and we'll go into a school. We'll do a 1 day a week. We will do a training session for the kids, then a kind of a study hall, a directed study hall with the kids, and teach them a life skill. So there's different topics that they have. They have a curriculum with different things that actually are hopefully benefit the kids and that they can take with them. And then they've been supplying them with shoes, balls, shin guards, shorts, and a uniform. And then what they do is they get them into a local league. And then a school bus on a Saturday morning rolls up on the school, and all the kids, there might be 2 or 3 teams, from a specific school that load up into the bus, and then the bus takes them to the local league. They play their game, jump back on the bus, and get home. So it's really cool. He's had a ton of success. He's got one chapter now in Mexico City and in Guadalajara. His goal was to try and reach 10,000 kids through the program by the World Cup next year. Might extend that to the World Cup of the Women's World Cup, but trying to get into Canada with one chapter. But he's all over the country now. I think he's in 10 states. And when I was in Miami just now, the purpose of that trip was actually to meet with a club there that would basically, there's a host club that helps facilitate it, as he can't be everywhere. But we find a club that can help. The first chapter was here in Las Vegas, and my players from UNLV, we would do clinics for the Get on the Bus program, and then some of my guys actually ended up coaching the games. Some of my college guys. So that's really been a great labor of love for my brother Tim. I serve on the board in some capacity, to bounce ideas off of, but Tim's really the one hustling.
And then another initiative that you're involved in is Rise to College. So we're moving up from little kids playing to potential college players. Tell us about Rise to College.
Yeah, we've, obviously my phone is filled with former teammates and players that I grew up with that are now in roles of leadership at college, whether it be on the academic side or on the coaching side. My experience as a Division I coach in the NCAA for 12 years as a head coach, and being involved with the junior college. I've got a lot of great relationships still, but there is, I think, a niche for. There's a lot of programs out there, but I think there's a niche for a little bit more specialized direction for some of these players that are looking to transition from the high school club experience into the college experience. So the former tennis coach of UNLV And I and a couple of other guys have gotten together to create this Rise to College. And hopefully we'll be able to help families navigate through this process of going, how to fill out a FAFSA. What is a FAFSA? How do I look for a college? What are some things that we can do? And so we want to just help, kids get to that, really, I hate to say that, next level, because what does that really mean? But
Right.
kids get to college, whether they're going to continue to play in college or not. What we're trying to do is help them understand that process.
A lot of good stuff going on. So everyone who has ever played this game, and thanks everybody for hanging in. This was scheduled for a half an hour, and we've gone an hour and 10 minutes. Rich, Frank, thanks for hanging in there. We've got lots of good interactivity. We've actually got people watching, people are consuming. This is great. So everyone who has ever played this game has stories, and every episode we are going to do a segment that we call One Crazy Story. Anyone who hasn't lived it has to understand that strange things happen. So I'm going to ask you, Rich, tell us your one crazy story.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so it kind of is going to morph into two, and I've forgive me for making your first episode confusing the one crazy story, but one of the owners of the Indiana Twisters, who I said I didn't get my signing bonus up front, not up front even, when I arrived, it was supposed to be there. After our first home game, he asked me to meet him in the restroom, and he counted out in cash, I think from the gate of the game, my bonus. So that owner also felt like he was strong enough and good enough to play on the team. So he wanted to jump into a training session one time also. So our coach allowed him to jump into the training session, at which that time, as I said, that first 25 minutes, there was no ball. It was all about dynamic stretches, dynamic warm-up, dynamic movement. And so as we were warming up, Terry Rowe and I were at the front of the two lines, and the owner actually was at the back of the line, and we just looked at each other and said, all right, we're going to get after this one. We're going to actually make this guy unable to even get through the warm-up without even touching the ball. So sure enough, and I think the whole team saw what we were trying to do, but we went from about an 80 to about 120 in terms of what that warm-up looked like. So good guy. I appreciate him bringing me to Indianapolis, and I eventually did get my cash, and we did kind of humble him a little bit, I think, as far as, thinking that he could be an owner and a player at the same time. Because those are two different things.
That is a story in and of itself that we will entertain much later in future versions of this episodes of this show. You mentioned now, for anybody who played in the 80s, if someone in the 80s asked you to meet them after the game in the men's room, totally different experience going down in the 80s. You're fortunate that you did not play in the indoor in that time there. So, Rich, let me ask you one last thing. We'll get you out of here on this. It's been almost 30 years since the Twisters went under. What sticks with you all those years later about that group, that time, and those experiences?
Well, I was in Indianapolis actually a few weeks back, and I had dinner with Matt Blackburn, and Matt and I would say Terry Rowe and I have stayed in pretty good contact. Also Osvaldo Monroy. The rest of the group I kind of have lost a little bit of contact with. But I think what I would really say, the takeaway for me, on this question, I think there's a couple of things. One, I was so impressed with the Midwest actually, and what Indianapolis was all about. That really will stick with me. I think I was surprised, and forgive me for being surprised, but that was something that I really enjoyed. The other thing I think was just trying to take a group of young guys, because I felt they were, we were surrounded at that point. Maybe I had more experience than some of the other players. And I remember, how hard and how high the demands were by our coach as far as the physical side, the technical side. Our diet he controlled our diet at that time too. And I just remember these young guys just giving it everything they had. There were a lot of guys that just had come out from either Butler or Indiana, some of the colleges locally. And they just were so excited, and they were sponges. They wanted to learn, they wanted to compete. They gave it everything they had, and I'll take those memories away as well. And then beyond that, I think, like I say, this having you around the team was I think was pretty cool too. And the fact that you're bringing this back, I'm super appreciative of the chance to hear from John Kluba, and it's going to make me want to reach out to him and Juan Carlos Reza and some of the other guys. It's going to be pretty exciting, kind of bringing these guys back, and I'll be all about trying to help with the 30-year reunion.
All right. Yeah, I've got Klub's number for you if you want it as well. Well, Rich, I knew you would not disappoint, and you did not. Rich Ryerson, thanks so much for being our first guest here on Let's Twist Again.
Awesome, Ken. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Great. All right, guys. That's it for now. Thanks for hanging in with us here for more than an hour. It was scheduled to be a half an hour, and we went well over that. Thanks to all of you who watched. This is fabulous. Tell a friend or a former teammate to watch next month when our guest will be Scott Lawler. Scott Lawler will announce the date and time of that one. It'll likely be about this same time of the month, same time of the year, same time of the week, hopefully. And breaking news today, we mentioned Tim Smith, who was spinner, mascot, and worked in the front office with us. He has been named the first general manager of the new Indoor Football League franchise in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So congratulations to Spinner. Good guy, great guy, love him to death. And congratulations on that. All right. That is it for this first episode of Let's Twist Again. We'll see you next month when Scott Lawler is our guest. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.